the big fallacy, at least I take this as in many ways the heart of the book, racial fallacies. Now, in this section, in this chapter on racial fallacies, you begin, almost all of this book is addressed to the current moment. But in racial fallacies, you start by going back about 100 years to lay out the progressive position in the 1910s and 20s, and for some years afterward. I'm quoting you. In addressing the massive increase in immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe, this massive increase in immigration begins toward the end of the 19th century and carries on through the 1920s. In addressing the massive increase in immigration, progressives claimed that these new immigrants were inherently, genetically, and therefore permanently inferior. So your argument is that a century or so ago, progressives believed roughly the same about Polish and Italian immigrants that whites in the South had long believed about blacks.
Oh, yes.
All right. Social justice fallacies. I'm going to read a quotation, then I'd like you to take us through this material. With the passing years, more and more evidence undermined the conclusion of the genetic determinists. Jews who had scored low on the 1917 Army mental test began to score above the national average on various tests as they became a more English-speaking group. A study showed that black orphans raised by white families had significantly higher average IQs than other black children, close quote. So in the century since this, you call them genetic determinists, which is one way of putting it. They were racist. They believed that some races were permanently inferior.
Yes, and should be eliminated.
And we've learned that's total nonsense. But even more than that, we've learned that IQ is malleable. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by malleable.
Well, that is to say that this ranking of
the ranking changes.
Jews
radically.
are stupid in 1917 because they score badly on tests, but they start
on tests written in English.
Tests written in English. Okay.
And people who spoke English did better on those tests.
Or that blacks have a certain fixed IQ ranking, and then you have black orphans raised by white families. In other words, a different cultural.
But even before that study wasn't done until 1976.
Oh, that's a late
But
one.
even as of the time of World War I, the data show that black soldiers scored below white soldiers. And this is one of the reasons it's so, you need people with contrary opinions to be able to be free to attack things. The people who believe that this was genetically determined, they said, that's it, that's the answer, and they moved on. Some other people said, let's look at it more closely. And they discovered that black soldiers from New York, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and one or two other states scored higher than white soldiers from Mississippi, Alabama, et cetera, et cetera. And as I mentioned in the book, people's genes do not change when they cross a state line. The problem is when you have people who are crusading for some idea, whatever the idea is, and they find some data that fits what they believe, that's the end of the story as far as they're concerned, which is fine if there are other people with contrary ideas who will look closer for something that goes the other way.
And then get listened to.